Can you imagine it? On a wedding day, the day that's supposed to be sacred, the day when glasses are raised in blessings, when the bride walks proudly under the gaze of her family, turning into the most humiliating moment of a mother's life. My name is Eleanor Bennett. I'm 66 years old, a former ICU nurse from Asheville, North Carolina. I spent my entire life sacrificing for my daughter, Harper, from endless 14-hour night shifts to the days I sold my wedding ring and even my old pickup truck just to cover her medical bills and tuition. I always believed that when the time came for her to wear that pure white gown and walk down the aisle, I, as her only mother, would sit proudly in the front row, witnessing the happiest day of her life. But I was wrong. Right there at the reception, in front of more than 200 guests, Harper grabbed the microphone, lifted her champagne glass, smiled radiantly, and then turned to look straight at me. Her voice rang out crystal clear, each word cutting through my heart like a blade. Family isn't always blood. Family is the people we choose. And Mom, you can leave now. The entire room fell silent. Every eye turned toward me. Some were shocked, others curious, and a few carried a look of pity. I rose to my feet, my hands trembling, the navy dress I had pressed so carefully now feeling out of place, meaningless. It was as if the ground had collapsed beneath me. But just as I thought I was about to fall apart, Daniel, the groom, the man I believed would bring happiness to my daughter, suddenly stood up. His face was taut with anger and determination as he looked around the hall. And what he said next left the entire room frozen, while I, the mother rejected by her own daughter, was about to discover a truth I never expected. Daniel stood tall, his eyes leaving Harper and fixing on me. In that moment, there wasn't a single whisper, no clinking of spoons against glasses, no background music. Only the suffocating silence of hundreds of people waiting. He gripped the microphone, his voice low but steady. Before Harper's mother walks out of this place, I think everyone here deserves to know the truth. I froze. The entire hall held its breath. Harper tugged frantically at Daniel's sleeve, whispering, Don't do this." But Daniel pulled away, his gaze harder than ever. From the day we met, Harper spoke of her mother with venom. She said her mom was selfish, bitter, always judgmental, never supportive. I believed her because she was the woman I loved, and I thought it was my duty to trust my future bride. But 1 month ago, I decided to find out the truth for myself. My heart pounded wildly. My hand gripped the back of the chair, barely keeping me upright. The hall began to stir, but Daniel pressed on, his voice ringing like a bell. I went to Asheville. I met Aunt Lila, Eleanor's younger sister. I heard about the years Eleanor spent working as an ICU nurse, 12 to 14-hour night shifts, just to pay for her daughter's education. I saw the medical bills from the year Harper had, her appendix surgery bills Eleanor went into debt for, so her daughter wouldn't have to wait in a public hospital. The murmurs grew louder. I saw some guests cover their mouths, while Daniel's mother, Patricia, nodded firmly, her face grave. Harper burst into tears, but Daniel didn't stop. Harper told me her mom never helped her through college, but I saw the bank statements myself. Every single month, Eleanor sent money, the very money she needed for her own medication and living expenses. She sold her wedding ring. She sold the old pickup her late husband left behind, all so her daughter could graduate without going without. My hand flew to my mouth. My throat closed up. Tears streamed uncontrollably down my cheeks. For years, I thought all my sacrifices had been buried, erased, known to no one. But in this moment, someone was standing up, laying it all bare for the world to hear. Daniel took a deep breath. He looked straight at Harper, his voice firm and final. "Harper, I cannot marry a woman who could turn her back on her own mother, a woman willing to humiliate the very person who spent her entire life sacrificing for her. I cannot build a family on lies and ingratitude." The hall erupted. Gasps of, "Oh my God," filled the air. Some people leapt to their feet, others pulled out their phones to record. Harper collapsed, her face streaked with tears and smudged makeup. And I stood there, my heart torn between agony and a strange, overwhelming sense of justice I hadn't felt in years. Daniel pulled the wedding ring off his finger and slammed it onto the head table. The metallic clang echoed like the end of everything. He turned to me, his face softening, his voice choked but resolute. "Mrs. Eleanor, I'm sorry for believing lies for so long. You deserve respect, not humiliation, and I will not let you walk out of here in disgrace. If anyone is leaving, it's us. This wedding ends today." The room exploded in chaos. Harper collapsed to the floor, screaming Daniel's name, but he was already walking away from the stage. Patricia came to my side, gripping my hand tightly, whispering, "You've done something extraordinary." And today, the truth finally came out. I stood frozen, my feet glued to the floor. In that moment, I had lost everything, and yet somehow, I had reclaimed myself. After the metallic clang of the ring echoed through the hall, I walked out on trembling legs, but with my head held high. Behind me, the noise still crashed like waves, but for the first time in years, I didn't feel ashamed. I felt lighter. Out in the cool garden, the wind rustled through the old oaks, carrying away the smudged makeup and the weight I'd worn for so long. I sat down on a wooden bench, my hands still trembling, my heart pounding as if it would burst. My phone buzzed in my pocket. It was Lila. Her voice came through, firm but gentle. "Nora, you don't have to go back in there. Daniel told them everything. You should be proud someone finally stood up for you." I broke down. But these tears weren't heavy anymore. They felt like they were washing years of dust from my soul. I whispered, "But Lila, she's still my daughter. She's still my Harper." Lila was quiet for a moment before she said, "Some lessons can only be learned when we face the consequences. Today, Harper got hers. And you got yourself back." I sat there for a long time. When I finally went back into the hall to grab my purse, many guests had already left. Harper was collapsed in tears, leaning on her friend's shoulders. She called after me, "Mom, please, don't leave me." I stopped and looked at her. For a split second, I saw the little blonde girl with pigtails, the one who used to hold my hand on the way to school. But then the memories flooded back, the unanswered calls, the ignored messages, the years of silence in my empty apartment. I turned away without a word. That night, Lila drove me back to her home in Asheville. Through the car window, I watched the city lights fade into the distance. Inside me, there was an enormous emptiness. But somewhere in that emptiness, a thin ray of light. I still had a future. A few days later, Daniel called. His voice was tired but sincere. "Mrs. Nora, I'm sorry you had to endure that humiliation. I've been thinking, and I want to ask you something. I'm starting a community project to support older women who've been forgotten by their families. I want you to join as an advisor. No one understands their loss and their strength better than you." I was stunned. I had never thought my quiet sacrifices could become something meaningful to others. I asked, my voice shaking, "Are you sure I have anything to offer?" Daniel answered without hesitation, "You've spent your whole life proving it. All I need is your yes, and we'll begin." And so, for the first time in years, I was no longer just the mother who was rejected. I became part of something new, a second beginning. We called the project Second Light. The first meetings were small, just a handful of women gathered in a modest room. But in their eyes, the eyes dulled by children who had forgotten them, by sacrifices never acknowledged, I found strength. I shared my story, they listened, and one by one, they began to share theirs. We laughed, we cried, and together we discovered a truth. The worth of a person doesn't lie in who loves them, but in how they learn to love themselves. 3 months after the wedding fell apart, when Second Light had finally found its rhythm, I heard an unexpected knock at the door. That afternoon in Asheville, a soft rain tapped against the old wooden porch. I opened the door, and there stood Harper, her hair tangled, her face worn, her eyes swollen from crying. "Mom!" Her voice was hoarse, trembling. "Can I come in?" I stood frozen, my hand gripping the doorknob. Months had passed without a single word from my daughter. All I knew came through social media: the marriage dissolved, Daniel gone, Harper's job crumbling. I exhaled slowly, then stepped aside to let her in. She sat on the couch, her hands clenched tightly together. Her eyes wandered across the small room, stopping on the binders and bulletin board filled with photos of the women in our project. Finally, she spoke. "Mom, I'm sorry. I was wrong." I sat across from her, calmer than I thought I'd be. Maybe these past months had built a patience I never had before. My voice was steady. "Harper, saying sorry is a start, but it's not enough. Do you understand how deep the pain you caused me really is?" She dropped her head. "I know. Every single day since that night, I've thought about it. I regret it so much, but the more I think about it, the less I feel I deserve your forgiveness." I stayed quiet. Outside, the rain dripped steadily. After a long pause, I continued. If you truly want to change, you have to face yourself. I don't need your tears or your begging. I need your actions. Her tear-filled eyes lifted. What do I have to do? I drew a long breath. First, you need therapy. You must understand why you could treat the very person who raised you with such cruelty. Second, you need to take responsibility for your own life. No more excuses, no more running. And finally, if you ever want to rebuild a relationship with me, you must start from zero. Not as mother and daughter, but as two people learning to trust each other again. Harper went silent, tears spilling onto her hands. After a moment, she nodded. I'll do it, I promise. In the weeks that followed, Harper actually began therapy. I didn't rush to believe, but each time she sent me a small message, not asking for anything, just a simple, "How are you today, Mom?" I felt something shifting. She even signed up as a volunteer for Second Light, quietly cleaning rooms, making tea for the older women. At first, some members recognized her and objected. Isn't this the girl who threw her own mother out of her wedding? But as they watched her patiently listen to their stories, their eyes softened. One afternoon, after a session ended, Harper approached me. She handed me a thick notebook, the cover labeled, "Accountability Journal." Inside were page after page of thoughts, confessions, and plans for change. I flipped through and saw her trembling handwriting. Today I learned that love is not a right, it's a gift, and I've thrown that gift away too many times. I closed the journal, my eyes stinging. I said nothing, only placed my hand on her shoulder. In that moment, I realized something. Forgiveness isn't about erasing the past, it's about setting boundaries and slowly allowing the seeds of change to grow. In the weeks after Harper began volunteering, the atmosphere at Second Light shifted. At every meeting, I sat quietly, watching, wondering if my daughter's presence was just another performance. But Harper remained humble. She didn't sit in the center, nor did she try to explain herself to anyone. She simply set up chairs, poured tea, took notes. One morning, as we prepared for a group sharing session, Margaret, a 72-year-old woman abandoned by her son, suddenly spoke up. I know who you are. You're the one who threw your own mother out of her wedding. Why should we trust you? The room went still. Every eye turned to Harper. I could hear her quickening breath. For a moment, I thought about stepping in, but then I stopped. This was her moment to face her past. Harper lowered her head, her voice soft but steady. You're right. I am that person. I hurt my mother, and I hurt myself. I don't expect you to believe me right away. I just want the chance to work here, to learn how to become someone better. If someday what I do helps you in any way, then that will be my answer. The silence lingered, but I noticed Margaret's eyes soften. She said nothing more, just gave a faint nod. When the session ended, Harper stayed behind to wipe down the tables. I walked over, placed a hand on her shoulder. You did well. That was the first time I've seen you stop running away. Harper looked up, tears glistening. I'm tired of pretending to be strong, Mom. I want to learn how to really be strong like you. Her words pierced my heart. How long had it been since I'd heard my daughter speak from her soul? A few days later, Harper brought me a canvas bag. She set it down in front of me and opened it. Inside was my old wedding ring, the one I had sold years ago to pay her tuition. I found it, she said softly. I know you sacrificed it for me. Now I want to give it back. I was speechless. The ring was tarnished, scratched, no longer shining, but its meaning outweighed everything. Tears welled as I whispered, you don't need to return it with things. What I need is for you to truly grow. Harper grasped my hand, her voice trembling. I'm trying, Mom. I won't give up. In the days that followed, I began to see real change. She kept her therapy appointments, wrote in her journal daily, and even asked to share her story at one of our meetings. At first, I worried, but when I heard her speak, I realized her voice no longer carried the arrogance it once had. Harper wept as she admitted her selfishness, confessed the harm she had caused not only to me, but to others as well. The women listened. Some wiped away tears, others nodded quietly. They didn't forgive her instantly, but their eyes grew less harsh. That night, as we returned home, Harper asked me, Mom, do you think you'll ever forgive me? I looked at her for a long moment before answering. Forgiveness isn't a single day, it's a journey. If you keep walking that path, maybe one day I'll be ready. But you must remember, Forgiveness isn't erasing the past, it's recognizing that you've truly changed. Harper nodded, her eyes red but carrying a flicker of determination. And inside me, for the first time in years, a small seed of hope began to grow. One crisp autumn morning, as golden leaves blanketed the narrow road leading to the Second Light Center, I received an unexpected call. On the other end was Emily, a reporter from a TV program dedicated to telling the stories of inspiring women. "Mrs. Nora, your story and the Second Light Project are going viral on social media. We'd like to invite you to appear in our special broadcast next month. Would you be willing?" I was stunned. Never in my life spent between hospital halls, long shifts, and silent sacrifices did I imagine being asked to share my story on television. I hesitated, but Lila encouraged me. "You've been silent your whole life, Nora. Now the world needs to hear your voice." On the day of filming, Harper came too. She sat quietly in the back row, watching. I stood on stage, the lights shining down, and for the first time I spoke the whole truth, from the ICU nights to the medical bills, to that devastating evening at the wedding. The hall was silent. When I finished, the applause roared like waves crashing to shore. Afterward, women came to embrace me, telling me they saw their own lives reflected in mine. And Harper. She walked slowly toward me, eyes swollen, and in front of everyone, she sank to her knees, her voice breaking. "I'm sorry, Mom. I promise all of you here I will never shame my mother again." I pulled her to her feet. I didn't answer with words, but my hand held hers tightly. For the first time, I let her feel a little warmth after so many cold years. But the test wasn't over. A week later, Harper received a job offer at a new company. It was a chance to start fresh, but it meant leaving Asheville, the very place where she was rebuilding her bond with me. That evening, she sat across from me, her eyes worried. "Mom, should I go or stay? I'm afraid if I leave, you'll think I'm abandoning you again." I met her gaze, speaking slowly. "Harper, what I want is for you to live right wherever you are. I don't need you by my side every day to prove your love. I need you to take responsibility for your own life. If this job helps you do that, then you should go." Harper broke down, throwing her arms around me. "Mom, I never thought you'd give me that kind of freedom." I smiled softly. Real love isn't a chain, it's wings. In the days leading up to her departure, I saw how much she had changed. She was no longer the arrogant bride in the white gown, but a woman learning to walk on her own. She kept up with therapy, kept writing her journal, and sent me warm, simple messages. "Have you had dinner, Mom?" Or, "Don't forget to wear a sweater." At the small farewell gathering for Harper, the women of Second Light came too. Margaret, the one who once doubted her, stepped forward, hugged her tightly, and said, "I've seen the change in your eyes, don't let it fade." Harper cried again, and I watched her, surrounded by the embrace of women who had once been strangers, feeling a fragile but real belief rise within me. Perhaps at last, she had learned what love truly means. And in that moment, I knew we were standing at the threshold of a new chapter, a chapter that closed the door on long, dark nights and opened one filled with hope. On the morning Harper left Asheville to begin her new job, the sky was strikingly clear. I stood at the bus station, watching my daughter pull her suitcase, her hair neatly tied back, her face etched with both worry and determination. She turned to me, her eyes no longer defiant or dismissive like on her wedding day, but the eyes of a woman learning to grow up. "Mom, I'll call you every week, not to ask for money or to complain, just to tell you how I'm living. Is that okay?" I smiled and nodded. "It's okay. But remember, Harper, I don't need you to prove anything with words. I just need you to live right, live kindly. That's the greatest gift you can give me." She hugged me tightly before stepping onto the bus. The engine rumbled, the wheels rolled slowly. I watched until she disappeared from sight, feeling a weight lift from my shoulders, and at the same time, a fragile hope that maybe, this time, my daughter could truly change. Back at Second Light, I walked into the meeting room. More than 30 women sat waiting. They smiled at me, then applauded. I stood before them and took a deep breath. I once believed my worth depended on whether my daughter loved me. I begged, cried, and humbled myself just to glimpse a little affection. But today, I understand. Real worth doesn't come from how others treat us. It comes from how we treat ourselves. When we learn to love ourselves, to set boundaries, to say enough, That's when we're truly free. Sniffles rippled through the room. Margaret dabbed her eyes. Other women squeezed each other's hands. I continued. Harper, my daughter still has a long road to prove her change. I'm not promising to forgive instantly, and I don't have to. But I'll give her a chance, because I want to give myself a chance too. A chance to live without torment. A chance to see my child become better. I paused, my voice softening. And to everyone sitting here, and to anyone hearing this story, if you're living with the pain of betrayal or rejection by someone you love, remember, you are not invisible. Your sacrifice is not meaningless. Most of all, you deserve love, beginning with the love you give yourself. The room erupted in applause. I saw their eyes light up, as if they'd found a piece of their own answer. That night, sitting alone on my porch under a sky full of stars, I felt peace for the first time in years. Not because Harper had changed overnight, but because I had. I no longer lived for someone else's approval. I lived for myself, for those who needed me, and for the women walking out of the dark to find their second light. And you listening to this story, if you've ever been betrayed, abandoned, or felt worthless, remember, it's never too late to start again. You can rewrite your story, beginning today. If you believe true love starts with learning to love yourself, leave a comment. Share this story so others can find strength. And don't forget to follow this channel for more stories that touch the heart and might just change the way you see life.